Hey, I'm JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please hit like. I gotta have a lot of energy because I'm gonna try to use my new anime to see if I can make my face kind of crazy before we start this video. What do you think? What do you think? Hey, JD here. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please hit like, and let's get on with this video. All right, with plenty of energy, what I'm gonna do today is show you exactly how to clean a watch with lighter fluid by hand. This is kind of the way they did it in the old days. They either had lighter fluid or naphtha, and they sometimes rinsed it with alcohol, but they did not have cleaning machines way back before electricity, around the same time as the gunfight at the OK Corral. So the first thing you need for tools to clean by hand is you need a jar. So you don't want to have to put too much lighter fluid in for some of the parts. So if you can get a jar that's not that deep, then you're not going to waste lighter fluid. If you have a jar like this, that's good, because then you can put the plates in this jar, where in this jar here you might not be able to put the main plates. So if I take this plate here, does it fit on the bottom? Yes, it does. It's my lucky day. If this were to be a size 18 watch, it would not fit in the bottom, so I could likely use this glass container to clean the pocket watch. Now this watch is what I call the oily watch, and this is a watch owned by Barry. I'm not going to give any last names, but Barry owns this watch. I used to disassemble these mechanisms when I clean the watches all the time. But there is such a great chance of breaking one of these small springs that are in here, and these are old watches. And with this particular road watch, you're not likely going to be able to find a replacement. You'll likely have to buy another watch of the same type movement. So if you don't clean this or don't disassemble it, it's probably not bad. This will not affect your watch I'll say it'll affect it a little, maybe, only if you have a dragging second wheel, and the dragging second wheel is because you have a dragging setting wheel, and there's a problem there. And I showed you that in a previous watch I was repairing. That watch is repaired and running extremely well right now. And this watch here, I'm going to douse this whole thing in lighter fluid, and then I'm going to use a light brush to clean all the dirt and oil off this watch. And lighter fluid evaporates really quickly, so you don't have to worry about the lighter fluid being there forever. And as far as I'm concerned, it leaves no stains. I haven't seen residue or residual stains from lighter fluid. I've been cleaning these vintage pocket watches for years, and they always come out operating extremely well when I'm doing it with lighter fluid by hand. And I decided to do this one by hand because this one was so oily that this will ruin my cleaning fluids by throwing this into my cleaning fluids because it's way too oily. Now what I could do is do this by hand and then put it in my cleaning machine to clean it again, but once you've cleaned it with lighter fluid, you've done 99.9% of the work. The barrel and spring aren't going to be cleaned because in a previous video I showed you how to put a spring into the barrel. I'd already cleaned that barrel before I've done that, so the barrel, the arbor, and the spring are all in place and ready to rock and roll. This needs to be cleaned, and these are the other things that need to be cleaned. And if you look really closely, you can see some of the Esso oil spills here. So there's an oil spill there, and you can see that the minute wheel is in dire straits here. Let me just pick that. Can I pick that up? I don't pick that up. I don't know. It's stuck. So there you go. There's oil on the bottom of that. There's oil here. There's oil there. Oil everywhere. So I'm just going to clean this by hand and very carefully. So you need a fine brush. It's good to have a fine brush. I've got a bigger brush here, kind of scrappier brush for the main part of the movement. And then I've got a smaller brush here I can use for the smaller components. Very light, will not bend anything or destroy pivots. And you need to clean it properly. You need watch paper. So what is watch paper? This is watch paper. So watch paper is not paper that you watch. Pause for the joke and then continue. So there it is, stock number 55, 1,000 sheets of lintless tissue. So that's the main part of this watch paper. I think it was $1.30 back in the day. It's lintless tissue. And you can just lick your finger just a bit to grab some of this stuff like that. Comes out like this, and after you've put the parts in the alcohol. You've wiped them all down. I'll show you how to do it. Then you lay these on the watch paper and let them dry. The watch paper will absorb a lot of the lighter fluid. I said alcohol earlier. That's because that's what I want to do right now is drink. So it'll absorb the alcohol, the lighter fluid, and then it'll evaporate. And you can actually reuse this watch paper after it's evaporated because it ain't on the tissue anymore. So you need watch paper. So you can get this at any watch supply store. I can't remember where I got this. You could probably buy a pack of this on eBay. So this is 1,000 sheets. I've had this for years, and I'm telling you, I never run out. You usually have 2 sheets worth that you're working with. Let me grab another sheet here. So this stuff is so thin, and if you grab an extra sheet, that's no problem. You can take the rest of the day off. So there's a double sheet here, so I can put the extra wet parts on that maybe. So there we go. Grab 3 sheets for this job. That is what you need, watch paper. The next thing you need is a puffer, some sort of puffer. These are the simplest ones. They've got an in-out valve on the back. As you can see, that little ball in there closes as you do this, and you've got this here. And that just helps you dry off the parts. But when you're drying the parts off, hold them with your tweezers, and that's the next thing you need. You need a good set of tweezers. I use these brass tweezers because they leave no marks. I've been using these brass tweezers for years, I tell you, and it came with a set of Anchor tweezers, and they work exceptionally well. I usually have 2 available at all times. So when I'm cleaning a watch, I use the tweezers to hold parts, to manipulate the parts. I use this to perhaps dry things off if I don't want to take too much time drying parts, but cleaning it by hand is not too difficult anyway. The third thing or fourth thing, wherever I am right now, you need is something to clean off the pivots. So what would I call this? Pivot wire, pivot gauge, pivot wood, pith wood, not pith wood. I'm getting close. It is called, I can't remember the name of this. Anyway, you need a bunch of these. So I buy these by this a whole bunch of sticks like that. So I get a ton of them. You can buy them like this, and then you cut them down to size. This is actually too long, and you need to use this size as a perfect size. And I'm sure when I make the video, I'll put the name of this up here. Pegwood, it's called. That's it. Pegwood, a pig. That's my Al Bundy impression. So you use pegwood to peg out the holes in the plates. So you've got the plates here, and you're cleaning out the holes in the plates for the jewels, if it's a high jeweled watch, starting off with the bigger holes and working your way down to the smaller holes. I like to do it that way. You can do it the other way if you want. You can start off with the smaller holes. You need to sharpen this pegwood with a knife. So then you need a knife to sharpen the pegwood to make sure it's ready. So I get a size this big so I can rotate that while I'm pegging out the holes. The other thing you need is a piece of Rodico. The Rodico will be used to roll the wheels. So you're taking a wheel and you're rolling it, and that is to clean out the teeth after you've done the job. And then you can use the Rodico also to roll the pinions that are on the inside. So let me grab my gear here very carefully. I need to put my watchmaking glasses on so I don't grab the wrong thing. So here is a gear. This is the pinion on the inside. So you don't want any dirt to be in the leaves of the pinion, and you don't want it to be any dirt to be in the teeth of the gear. So you use this to roll the gear and to make sure there's nothing in the teeth, and actually to roll the pinion or dab the pinions. You can also examine the pinions up close to make sure there's nothing, no residual thing there. So that's another thing you're going to need to make sure the pinions are cleaned. And then you're going to need oil for reassembly of the watch, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about the cleaning process today. So hand cleaning, manual cleaning a pocket watch. So let's continue. Now you need some lighter fluid. I use Zippo Premium lighter fluid, good stuff, very flammable, poison. Be very careful, caution, blah, 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 blah. So you don't want any sparks near this thing, this lighter fluid. I don't believe this lighter fluid will blow up. I just believe it's flammable. I remember when I was a kid using this to start fires and stuff. So this is how you open it. So I've got lighter fluid. I use this stuff here, Zippo lighter fluid. There's other brands, but this is the simplest brand. This is what the top looks like. And I just simply take the lighter fluid, and I'm going to do it right now, and I pour this on top of the part that I'm about to clean. And you want to put gloves on for this, so you want to have some glove to protect your hands. So I put enough in here to drown the part, and so the part is now drowning, and I move the lighter fluid far away from the action so I don't have any fear of that lighter fluid being in contact with any sparks or anything else while I'm doing this work. The other thing I would recommend if you're right over the top and you have poor ventilation is to use some kind of a mask. You can use the old COVID masks, but I'm not sure if they'll work for lighter fluid, but they're pretty good. It's pretty good anyway to use a mask. You don't want to do this without a mask on. Let's see what that looks like. Oh yeah, looking good. So there, that's the mask. So now I've got the part in the container. This stuff evaporates super fast, so you want to use a piece of pegwood to hold it in place and not your tweezers while you're using your brush to brush it. So you're doing that and you're brushing it. And I know I do the hairspring with this as well. So I'll take the whole balance and hairspring and dunk them in lighter fluid. And the lighter fluid does not dissolve the shellac on the impulse jewel. It does not, I repeat, does not dissolve the shellac on the impulse jewel. For years I was worried about that, and I asked some guys online. There's a blog that Mark who's a professional watchmaker runs. It's a watch repair blog. You just have to type watch repair. And there's a guy on there who was called Old Hippie. I'm sure he's still on there, and he's a professional watchmaker. And Old Hippie confirmed with me that you did not have to worry about losing the impulse jewel while I'm doing this. So there we go. I'm cleaning the crap out of this thing here and rolling the gears while I'm doing this. And once I've cleaned this effectively, I also go through this with Rodico, at very close range here. I can lift this up, the plate up, and then let that ride down like that. See how that rode down the brush? That way I'm not slamming the plate down, and it gives me a little bit of control. This watch had enough oil in it to change my car oil. Somebody oiled the crap out of this watch. I think I might have asked Barry, and he laughed. He said, I don't know who oiled it. So the other thing I need to do in this watch is take these little screws out here and take the jewel out and clean that jewel and do that as a separate process. So you see how I let that ride down? I had years and years of cleaning watches this way before I bought my cleaning machine, and I'll say it was successful watch cleaning. It's very precise. You know the part is getting cleaned. There's no question about it. About it. Now once you clean the part, you have to put it on the watch paper. First thing I do is I usually take my brush here and I put it on a jar like this so it doesn't go anywhere. I'll just move that aside. And the second thing I like to do is make sure I've got gloves on, but right now I'm in a rush to move this part over, so I'm going to move the part over, grab it with my tweezers, and try not to drop it. So this is going to be a little tricky, but it's doable. So I grab it with my tweezers, and I'm putting it on the paper here, and the paper is on my old wooden desk, so I'm not concerned about putting it on my mat. If that gets on my mat, it tends to dissolve the material my mat's made it of. So I just usually put it down like this, and then I move it to a new spot, because there's a lot of lighter fluid down here, right? So, and then I move it, and you can see how it's getting wet. Well, I'll show you later how this dries off. It dries off extremely well. And you can probably not shift it and just let it dry off, but you see how I'm moving it to this spot here, and it's almost dry now. And these spots here will dry off very fast, and I'll prove it by blowing this with my little blower and show you how this dries off. Amazing. Now I'm going to start recording here as I blow this thing. Look at this. This is how fast this stuff dries. Now that's not completely dry yet, but it's pretty darn close. And I'm just puffing this area here to make sure that I get most of it. Some of that liquid has gone through to my desk, but I'm not concerned. And again, you want to put it on a hard surface that's not affected by the lighter fluid. Now I'll move this over, and you can see how the 99% of that was done. Now I could flip this over and do that, but I can also take my blower, and you can see the liquid moving on that, and just take my blower like this and get rid of the majority of the liquid that's on here, which is the lighter fluid, and make sure I get all of it. And this part will be out there for quite a while, so by the time I'm ready to use it or do the installation, it is completely dry. So I know when I've done watch cleaning with the machine, I've sometimes left it overnight and then started on another watch just to make sure everything is completely dry, because it doesn't, the cleaning fluid from the cleaning machine, after I put it through the heater, it'll dry off, but lighter fluid just dries off immediately. So I have no issue with lighter fluid and being used. So that's that part there. So let's just move the camera over to a new position. So I've cleaned the big plate, so might as well just throw the little plates in there now and clean them as well. They're all full of oil. They are oily, 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 like you would not believe. They're. I'm going to have to clean my watch holding container after, because of the amount of oil that has been left in that container. It needs cleaning before I use it for anything else. But as I said before, lighter fluid will get rid of all these oils very nicely. It's way better than using isopropyl alcohol. Naphtha does exactly the same thing. So if you have naphtha, you can actually use naphtha. Back in the day, someone gave me a clock, and I needed to do clean the clock. Now, I am not a clock guy, and I did not want to spend time cleaning a clock, because you need a different set of tools to clean a clock. So what I did is I doused the whole clock in naphtha, and then from a friend of mine, he had a big container full of naphtha, and I left it overnight, and I flipped it around and naphthaed the other part of the clock. And after I was finishing naphthaing the whole clock, I just let it dry. Once I had it dried, I pegged out all of the holes that were part of the gearing that needed to be pegged out. The ones that were actually exposed, the ones that weren't exposed, obviously I couldn't do anything there, but then I just oiled those. And that was around 5 years ago, and that clock is running exceptionally well today. And it's a Sessions clock, it's a mantle clock, and it's up in my living room, and it runs like a charm. Now the clock enthusiasts in my local club thought that this was a horror. This is what I had done with the clock was, I'm not sure I have a term to use, but they were going to ban me or shun me for using naphtha for cleaning the clock. So, but it turns out it worked perfectly. It's not the right way to clean a clock, by the way, because you should be looking at the holes and making sure that you don't need to put another bushing in or anything like that. So after I've cleaned these two things here, I just lay them down in the watch paper that I was using before and grab them, shake off any residual lighter fluid if I can. Try not to drop it. You see if I can grab this like this. There we go. Just shake it off so you can get the big stuff off. Just touch the side. There we go. And then I'll just do exactly the same as I did before. Now while I'm doing the blower thing and other stuff, what I can do now is just throw in other gears and things that need to be cleaned. And that should help me along nicely. That way, while I'm making sure those plates are dried off, I know that this stuff is getting nicely cleaned. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm trying to grab the ratchet wheel right now without any success. So there we go. There's a ratchet wheel. Throw that in there. And I see a hair. Make sure when you examine your watch or your clock or your movement after cleaning it with lighter fluid that you don't have any residual hairs in there. So the other thing is I'm going to clean the wheels separately. So I'm not going to throw those wheels in with here because they're very delicate, and you do not want to have something broken like a pivot on the wheel break because you threw it in with a bunch of heavier gears. That is not a smart thing to do. So, and I try not to do stupid stuff while I'm cleaning watches, although As you probably know, occasionally I do. But amplitude, I did a video on amplitude a little while back. How do I get such great amplitude? Well, I make sure the whole powertrain is working properly. So this, didn't have the opportunity to run this watch before I got it because it was broken, and it required a brand new mainspring. So I couldn't tell whether this watch was in good condition. And I'll say or not, although you don't have to say or not because the or not is implied. Let me see, clean that off. This is the hour wheel, and I know that the last pocket watch I fixed, I found a donor watch with a better hour wheel, and I used the better hour wheel on the watch I repaired, so the person's getting a brand new hour wheel, or a very nice hour wheel, and not having to deal with the hour wheel that was kind of ratty on the top. So that's these parts. I'm going to throw these on the watch paper now too, and see what let's have a look at the watch paper. All right, there's the watch paper. There's the other parts that I've cleaned already, and I just want to do this here. When you're using a puffer and you're puffing bigger parts, it's usually not a problem. If you're using a puffer to puff small parts, you need to hold on to them because they will go flying on your desk, and that's not a good thing. You'll lose parts by using a puffer. These things actually are pretty powerful. The wind or the air coming out the end of this thing is pretty powerful. It's a simple puffer, but it's very effective. I find it's good because I can control what's going on. And I usually do that to make sure I've got everything is dried nicely. And as you can see, the paper's starting to dry out now. And I'd love to be able to turn this one around. Let's see if I can turn this the other way. There we go. And I'll use the puffer on the other side, like that. In the meantime, back at the ranch, this thing here has had the opportunity to dry out, and it is completely dried. I will still go inside the main areas with Rodico to make sure there's nothing left over. And as you can see, the paper, the watch paper here, from the lighter fluid that was in there is dried off as well, largely dried off. There's still a little bit left over. And this one here needs to go down. Let me see if I can just help myself here. There we go. And use the puffer again, and that'll give that a hand. And you can see the lighter fluid. There's a bit of a design here. It looks like an upside down sheep. And it is almost done. This is an interesting old watch. I don't think I've ever worked on one with this brand name. The name looks like Dude, but it's not. It's Rode, R-O-D-E watch. So there's people better than me that would understand the history of the Rode watch company, and it probably doesn't come from the same guys that are Rode scholars, I suspect. So that's a Rode watch, and there I've done that, and now I've got to put these other pieces in. So there's another piece. There's some components, some of the wheels here, and this is for the pallet fork, and I want to make sure that these are also down here drying. And this wheel here is that was the hour wheel that just went down. Now the seconds wheel is going down. And you can usually pick up the ratchet wheel by putting your tweezers inside the hole and then dropping it like that. That's a good practice for the ratchet wheel. So while this stuff is trying to dry off, I'll give it a little bit of a squirt here. Try to make sure that the leftover liquid here, the lighter fluid, doesn't get on any of the other parts that I've already got dried off. So I'll let that dry off. And meanwhile, back in the ranch, I'm going to do the gears. Now, just so I don't get in trouble here, I'm going to do the gears one at a time. So I'm going to grab the first gear here, and I'm going to put this pinion up like this. And I'm going to use the pegwood and put it in between the arms of the gear here, and just very lightly swipe the full gear and the pinion. Then I'll lift my pegwood up, go to the other side, and do the same thing, because you're going to access a different part of that gear by doing that. Lift it up again, go to the other side, and I'm pinning it down on the bottom of the jar, and then use the lighter fluid again to do the gear, to clean the gear. Now I'll flip this around. I don't like doing it this side because for some reason if you get it caught you can break something, but I'll do it ever so lightly here. So that's gear number 1. Tap that off and then pick the gear up by the arm here like that, turn it around, and you can put it on the paper. Now I can put it on this paper right here because I know I've got 2 leaves of paper, so it's pretty thick, so I'm not going to have a problem. Now I'm doing the 4th wheel. So this one here is super dangerous because you've got the pivot for the seconds hand on this side. So I'm going to very carefully do this one, like I said before. And I might even flip brushes because this is, I think the end of the brush is fine. Just make sure you hit the very end of the brush and nowhere else, okay? And then I'll do that, flip it around. And in this case, I'm keeping the pivot for the seconds hand up. I'm keeping that up. I do not want that down for any reason. If I put extra pressure down on that, that could bend that pivot, and then I'm screwed. So I'm good with that, and I'll examine the pinion on that later, but it should be fine. But I'll have a look at that later and make sure it's in good condition. So you do not want to have any opportunity of breaking that pivot on the top. So that's 2. And then now I have the intermediate wheel here. And here I can put the pinion facing downward. And it's simply the intermediate wheel between the 2nd wheel and the 4th wheel. And so this would be considered the 3rd wheel in a pocket watch or a watch. And again, I'm taking my pegwood and pointing it straight down like that. And in this one here I can flip it, but very carefully put the pegwood in the middle so I'm not touching anything. And then I can douse my brush and clean the pinion here with the lighter fluid. And that gets off everything. It's amazing. It is truly amazing. And these wheels are not usually in that bad a condition. I'm going to grab it from the actual rim of the wheel this time. And now the last one I've got to do is the escape wheel. So I'm going to grab that very carefully and put that in there and let it soak for a few seconds. So here I'm going to be extremely cautious because this is also micro small. But you want to make sure all the feet on the escape wheel are cleaned. So I'm very lightly brushing that. And then I'm repositioning my pegwood again and brushing it again very lightly, and then repositioning my pegwood and brushing it again very lightly. And you don't have to do it a lot with this, so that'll clean the feet on this. And once they're clean like that, then I'm able to take this out. Let me grab this, that, and then put that down like this. So now that's on the watch paper. So I've got those things cleaned. I can, in fact, clean the screws that are all the same. So, and these were pretty oily. So, but I can see that they're all the same height. They're basically all the same screw. So in some cases you will get a watch where the screws might be slightly different. I know I've got a screw for the balance that's over on the other side. I'm going to clean that separately so I don't interfere with that. And I've got case screws that I can throw in there because those 2 case screws are absolutely different than the other ones. And again, I'm just going to play hockey with these screws. I don't think I can use my pegwood to do anything, but I can use my tweezers. So other than that, you can just grab the screw, play a little bit of hockey, and try to clean those screws off. And they're pretty tough, so you don't have to worry about it. So grab a screw, and these are one of the screws with half heads on them for the case screws, and just wipe it down quickly. Again, this will not affect the functioning of the watch. These are simply the screws that hold down the actual plates on the watch. So, and they're pretty small. I have a large collection of screws that if I were to lose a screw of any type, I could likely find another screw of the same type, and I can also make a screw. So I've got all of the dies and stuff needed to actually cut a screw. So I know how to do that. I've done it before. I haven't had to do it in a long time because I have such a great collection of screws. So just like the other stuff, after I'm finished cleaning those screws, I just take them out and sit them on the watch paper, and in this case they'll dry off pretty darn fast, and then we'll continue. There's only a few things left to do. One thing I need to do is put the pallet fork into the lighter fluid, and that always worries me, but I'm going to do it, and we'll see that in 2 seconds. Now I'm taking my puffer and I'm blowing straight down on these parts, and just to make sure they don't go flying, I blow straight down on these parts. And if you go sideways, then go look on your mat, because that's where they're going to end up. So, and you can still see them moving even though I'm blowing straight down on them. So I'm just doing a little bit here, not a lot, and then I'll just drag this whole thing out of the way. But before I do that, let's do the pallet fork. Now the pallet fork I will hold while I'm doing it, and I will just simply get the brush with some lighter fluid on it, and I will lightly brush the pallet fork. And again, the pallet fork should not, the jewels in the pallet fork should not be affected by the lighter fluid. So I have to turn the pallet fork around and get the opening, the mouth of the pallet fork. And then after I've done that, very quickly, I end up rubbing them with Rodico anyway at the end of the day, and or pithwood, and I'll show you that later. But when I do the pallet fork, once I've got it done, I like to dry that off immediately. So I'll hold it while I'm just using my puffer here to get rid of any residual lighter fluid from the pallet fork, and I just very quickly do that like this, and that's pretty much dried right now because there's very little stuff that goes on the pallet fork, and I just rest those down like that. So I will wipe the hands down, as you see, and I got some extra screws I got to do, but I'll wipe those hands down. I won't use the lighter fluid in those hands because I won't know what the lighter fluid does to the paint. I'm not sure, but I can wipe them down with Rodico. And there's the cannon pinion I need to still do, so I forgot about the cannon pinion. Throw the cannon pinion in there because you want that to be clean, because you won't be doing any canyoning or pinioning if you don't have the cannon pinion in there. So I'm going to toss that cannon pinion in. It's pretty tough, and I'm also going to throw in, I think that is the screw for the crown wheel, I believe. And so I'm going to do these two as well. So I've got the cannon pinion in here, and it doesn't need a lot. You're gonna need to puff out the center of it though to get rid of the lighter fluid, but it will dry. So, and I can hold these down with my tweezers a little bit here as I do these screws. I'm not too concerned with these screws. So that pretty much have everything done. I think this last screw here is for the balance. I'm pretty sure. I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm pretty sure. So take that out and put it back. And I'll take these screws here and I'll put them on the watch paper. And you'll see that the screws that are already on the watch paper are done and dusted. I'm going to put these off on the side. And the watch paper is great for grabbing the liquid out of the cannon pinion, because you can hold it up straight and it'll draw that lighter fluid straight down onto the watch paper, so you don't have to worry about trying to find that liquid. So there we go. I want to put that independent screw over here and just let that soak for a second, and then I'm going to put it back in. I may want to dry that one off a little bit here, because this one was on its own, and I believe it's for the balance cock. I'm not sure, I'm not absolutely sure, because this one here might be the balance cock one. It's probably the balance cock one. But I'll put this one back where I found it in my tray. And I may switch trays because my tray is not very good. It is kind of all oily, and I don't want to put the stuff back into an oily tray, so I'm going to get a fresh tray and be right back. There's the oily tray, and I'm replacing that with a fresh tray, but I'm making sure that some of the components are together. So I know that this screw here was kind of on its own, independently on its own, and it was kind of combined up with the watch hands, right? So I'll just throw the watch hands in here and being very careful here. And I know that there was a small screw here on its own that was part of where the mainspring was, and there's kind of a metal washer that I believe that was part of the crown wheel. I think that's where that ended up. So I'm going to take these independent screws here. So I think that I think I may puff out the inside of the cannon pinion. So puff that out, make sure it's good. And then I'm going to group all this stuff where it was before. So I'm just going to put it on the sides here. And everything will dry out in time. Stuff that's been there for quite a while is already dried out, so I'm not too concerned with that. I'm going to take all these screws and toss them in the middle because that's kind of where they were before. And then I'm going to take the wheels that are all dried off now and put them on their own. I'm very careful about all of this, right? This is a gentleman's favorite little watch, so I want to make sure that there's no issue with that. And so be very mindful of the upper pivot of the fourth wheel, right? And I got this screw here, and then in the pallet fork I'm going to put over here with all the hands and stuff because it's kind of special, right? And now I've got the main plates to put in, so I'm going to take the main plate and I'm going to grab that with my tweezers and then place that in the center, and that should be able to dry off in there. That's already dried, by the way, but I'm going to take the main plate, throw it in there, and I don't want to touch it with my fingers. And I got these other plates I'll just throw on top here, and these are already dried, but I'm going to show you what I mean by pegging out the holes in a second. So we're going to just throw these on the top, and then I want to put I think that's not the ratchet wheel, that's the crown wheel, I think. Put that over on the side. I've got this here, which is part of the whole pallet fork arrangement, and I think probably that's where this little tiny screw comes from, is from this rig here. So I'm going to move it over there because it's likely part of that. And then I've got the minute wheel, I've got the hour wheel, and I've got the ratchet wheel. Let me grab this ratchet wheel, see if I can lift that up from its home. There's a ratchet wheel, and I think I've got all the screws, and one of these is a ratchet wheel screw and one of these is the crown wheel screw. So I'll throw them in here. I can't remember which is which, but I'll throw them in here, and I know they'll only fit a certain way. If I actually put this one down over the crown wheel, does it fit into the hole here? No, it doesn't. So does this fit into the hole? That might fit better. So one of them is does that fit? I think that does fit. And check this one here, fitting in here. Does that fit in there, or does this fit in there? I think this fits over here. And this fits over here. There we go. That's kind of probably where they belong. Kind of shoulda, woulda, right? So, and I know on this ratchet wheel, I think that there's some kind of this is supposed to be in here, like that, but the other half was missing. So the other watchmaker, I'm not sure if it's needed or not. We'll see when we reassemble, right? But this was in here, so it. I don't know if I put half a part in there, that doesn't make any sense. So there's that. I've got the barrel that I've already dealt with, and then I've got the face of the watch, which I want to make sure is part of this whole enterprise, right? And I want to be very careful with the face, so I may leave that out for now. And I usually put that into the watch case itself. The case I will clean by hand, and I usually use Rodico to clean the case. and no more. So there I've got the case and I've got the crystal for the top, and that should just fit right on there like that. Just scoot that on, and I'll clean all this up separately, right? So, and you wouldn't put this in the cleaning machine anyway, right? So now I can just put this aside. I could put it in here, but for now I'll just put it aside. And so this is what I have. So this is where I am with the manual cleaning of the watch. I'm not going to go through the oiling, but I'll likely let all this stuff dry overnight just to make sure it's completely dried. I'll extra puffer this stuff, and I'll put on my pair of gloves that I'm going to need for the assembly. But let me talk about pegging out the holes. There's a piece of watch paper that gathered up all of the lighter fluid, and of course that was lighter fluid and residual dirt that was part of the watch, and there's what you had left. Not too bad. And the actual, there's the color of the actual lighter fluid, so it's probably pretty oily, but it's going to be thrown away. And then again, I've got to clean this up nicely with soap to get rid of the oil so I can reuse this as well. But that's what that looks like. So now let's talk about pegging. All right, so you get the midriff of a watchmaker. So now, as you can tell, I stay in pretty good shape. So I use a Husky blade here to do this work. The toughest Naiman tools. And the reason I use this is because the end of this, it's like a razor blade on the end. And these blades are replaceable, which I love. And all I do for this is I take my piece of pegwood here, and I want to make sure the end of that pegwood is sharp. So I'm carving off a little tiny bit of wood from the end and letting my knife ride right down to the end. And you can see how it's curling. There's a little bit of a curl there on that. So, and I will remove that curl, but I want to make sure each part of that is done. And I'm taking a pretty steep angle because I'm going to be pegging out the smaller holes here. So, and this is after, so now I've got it kind of where I want it to be. You're going to need a loop to do pegging properly. So I'm going to see if I can, I'll bring that in a bit close to show you, but what I'm doing is I'll do the big holes first. So the first hole I'm pegging out here is this hole here. I should actually have a glove on this hand here too, so hang on a second. All right, now I've got dual gloves, I tell you. And I'm not sure what the focus is going to look like, but it's pretty simple. So I'm going to start with the big hole here. So this is the hole where the mainspring goes, right there. So the barrel, and just put the piece of pegwood in and then rotate it carefully. Just rotate it slowly and carefully. And once you're finished pegging it out, you may not have to peg it out from both sides, but if you look really closely, you'll see that there might have been some wood there. So let me just turn off the light here so we can see that properly. So you can see a little tiny bit of dirt there. So on the very inside of this hole, there is a little tiny bit of dirt. Can you believe it? Unbelievable. And so each one of these holes, I don't worry about the screw holes at all. But then if I'm looking at the center wheel hole, that would be the hole right here, right? That's the center wheel hole right there. And I'll take my pegwood out and I'll peg out this hole here. So I'll make sure that that hole gets pegged out and roll the pegwood to make sure that it's pegged out. And after you've done that, you want to make sure you don't have any leftover pegwood sitting in there. So you can dab it with Rodico after to make sure you don't have any residual pegwood there. I'm reaching over here. I apologize. You see that very old made in Japan guitar in the corner. So that was my very first guitar as a boy. I still have it, so I'm sure it's worth 15 bucks. So I'll dab the center hole as well to make sure there's no pegwood left over. Then I'll go to the next hole. I usually go from the smallest hole over, but I'm just showing you for demonstration purposes. The next hole would be where the intermediate wheel is, and I'll be pegwooding it from the inside like that, and find the hole, and then just rotate like that. And once you've done that, you're good. That's all you need to do. And then dab it with the Rodico. So you do that with all the holes in all the plates, and you're going to end up with nicely cleaned jewel holes for your pocket watch. So do that with everything and peg it out nicely. Now for the wheels. So as I said before, you want to clean the wheels. So all you need to do is roll the wheels down the Rodico very carefully. So I'm just rolling these wheels down the Rodico very carefully, and maybe get yourself a better piece of Rodico than this, but roll the wheels down like that. And then I usually dab the end of the pivots on both sides to make sure that there's nothing left over on the pivots. I find this Rodico even works better than pithwood to do that. Although people do jam this into pithwood, and if you're doing that, let me show you what pithwood looks like. All right, so this is a piece of pithwood, and what I would do here is I would take this gear and I would just jam this right into the pithwood. It's a very soft wood. It's almost like balsa wood. And you jam this on the end of the pithwood like that, and this clears off anything that's in that gear. You do that with all the gears, and roll them and jam them with the pithwood. Be very careful with the fourth wheel because of the pivot on the end. Be very careful. Even when you roll this fourth wheel, you can stretch out your Rodico like this and fold it over like that, and then stretch it out again and fold it over, and then stretch it out again, and then you've got yourself a little bit of a runway here. And now when you grab the wheel and you're rolling it down the runway, it's a little bit easier because it's a flat surface. And I just basically put a very little bit of pressure on the wheel itself as I'm rolling it down the runway, so like this. And that takes anything that might be left over in the gears. So you want to make sure that that's done. The other thing I do is I take the very end of the pallet fork and I just touch the jewels of the pallet fork. Let me put it down here for a second and grab it again. I just touch the jewels of the pallet fork with the Rodico in case there's any hair or anything that's on there. And then the back end where the mouth of the pallet fork is, I'll push that into the Rodico pretty deep like that, and that'll clean the mouth like this. I'm not too concerned about the pivots. They're likely clean and they don't need to be as, they're usually not a problem. I'll just say that. So that's all I do for that. And I think that might be it. The last thing is you've got to make sure that you take the screws, depending on the level of watch you have. If you're working on a very high-end pocket watch, then you're likely going to have cap jewels on your cap jewels might be on your escapement. It might be on your not your fourth wheel, but your escape wheel, and maybe your pallet fork, and for sure where your balance, your upper and lower balance, will have the jewel and a cap jewel. You have to unscrew these screws and take that jewel out and clean it, and also gives you the opportunity to examine that jewel to see if there's any cracks. I'm not going to do that now. I've done it a boatload of times in my videos, so go look at some of my other videos on watch cleaning. So that's it. That's cleaning a watch by hand. And as a last note, if you don't have a cleaning machine, there's nothing wrong with cleaning a watch by hand. You're not going to be able to do it with a watch, but you will be able to do it with a pocket watch, but not with a watch. You're going to need a professional cleaning machine. I have the Pearl machine, which works quite well with 3 jars. And a little tip someone gave me the other day was that the third jar is usually always clean because you've got 2 rinse jars and you go from one rinse jar to the other. He said, why don't you take the clean rinse jar, put it where the first rinse jar, which is dirtier, and then take the first dirty rinse jar, get rid of it, put new liquid in it, and then put it as your last rinse jar. And that way you save, you're saving on material, like on liquid for rinsing and cleaning. So you can do this all by hand. It took a little over an hour to clean this pocket watch. I still haven't done all the pivots, so give yourself around an hour and a half to do this with lighter fluid. So you're going to take that much time. If you're really anal retentive, you can wash off the lighter fluid with isopropyl alcohol. I've never found that to be an issue and never needed to do that. And the watch, the lighter fluid will evaporate completely, and I don't believe there's residue on there that will cause a problem. I believe back in the day they used all kinds of stuff to do this, but basically used naphtha to clean up watches. So and I've done pocket watches for almost 20 years now. So anyway, thanks for watching my channel. I really appreciate the support, and hopefully lots of people are going to watch this particular video. And I got dual Michael Jackson gloves on right now. So I'll see you later, and thanks for subscribing to my video, and thanks for hitting like, and thanks for coming and watching the stuff I do. The next thing I'm likely going to do is a close-up magic video on a coin vanish I want to show the world.